Welcome to Chat with the Lawyer. I'm your host, Walla Blagay, and today we are honored to have such a celebrity in the house, former Lieutenant Governor and soon-to-be Congressman Anthony Brown. Welcome.
Thanks, Walla. Thanks for having me on the program and spending a little time with you and your viewers.
Thank you. So tell us, actually, you've been well known actually in Maryland at this point, and especially Prince George's County, and you've got such a rich background. So tell us about that.
Well, I've been blessed with the opportunity to serve the families and small businesses in Prince George's County years ago as a member of the House of Delegates, representing great communities like from District Heights and the Largo, Kettering, Mitchellville area, Seat Pleasant, Capitol Heights, Morningside for 8 years, and then after returning from a year of duty in Iraq, I teamed up with Martin O'Malley. As you know, I was the Brown in the O'Malley-Brown administration as Lieutenant Governor, where I had an opportunity to focus on higher education issues, healthcare issues, and economic development. And we did a number of things, particularly here in Prince George's County, like the health enterprise zones, like expanding pre-K education. These programs benefited the entire state, but they were particularly important here in Prince George's County. So I've had 16 years of an opportunity really to serve the people of Prince George's County. And
let me ask you, what did you do before you got into public service?
So I'm an attorney. So let's chat with a lawyer.
I know. Talking with the lawyer.
Graduated from Harvard Law School. In fact, I graduated a year after our president, Barack Obama.
Did you know him?
I knew him, yes, indeed. And he didn't go by Barry when he was at Harvard Law School. It was Barack. And he was president of the Law Review, and he was very active on campus. We socialized. I don't think I'm in his BlackBerry today, but I've had the opportunity to stay in touch with him, a little bit over the years. But obviously, he's been busy as he's been getting that gray hair. So I graduated Harvard Law School, and then I worked I clerked for a judge, a federal court judge, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces for 2 years. Then I was an associate attorney at the law firm of Wilmer Hale. It used to be Wilmer, Cutler, and Pickering, a firm in Washington, D.C. And then when I was elected to the House of Delegates, I joined a small firm here in Prince George's County. So I've had a variety of practice experience. I've enjoyed representing small businesses. I did a lot of pro bono work when I was at Wilmer Hale. So the legal profession has been a very exciting a journey for me.
Nice. Okay. So let's get into you're soon to be congressman, and people are probably wondering, what is the future hold? What do we expect? And one of the first things that has been a concern, especially in Prince George's County, is the FBI building, moving more jobs into Prince George's County. A lot of people feel that they are going to D.C., they're going to Virginia to work, and they would like to work and play in the same area. So what?
Sure. So one of the priorities for me, kind of broadly, is to strengthen the local economy here in Prince George's County. Because if we're talking about increasing funding for our schools, if we're talking about increasing funding for law enforcement, if we're talking about bringing quality of life amenities to Prince George's County, a lot of that begins by strengthening the tax base, expanding the tax base, which means growing the local economy. And a big piece of that is ensuring that we have federal offices and activities in Prince George's County, because they're in Montgomery County, they're in Northern Virginia. So the Maryland delegation, and when I was Lieutenant Governor, we were working on this, and it's moving forward, is to bring the FBI building to Prince George's County. And with that, not only do you bring the federal jobs, which really isn't that much of a plus up for Prince George's, because there are already a lot of Prince Georgians that work for the FBI. But it's that, but it's also the private sector jobs that are associated with the FBI and that law enforcement, that cybersecurity, that intelligence activity that happens. A lot of contracting, whether it's for intelligence, firms that do intelligence, they do analysis, and other aspects of law enforcement. So it will really spur the local economy. We have businesses in Prince George's that are already prepared to do that kind of work. Some of them are doing that with the FBI, but by locating it here in Prince George's County, we'll really be able to ignite and fuel an industry around the FBI. And I'll also add that there's a lot of synergy with College Park, the University of Maryland and College Park. And I just learned this recently, College Park sends more of its graduates to work for the FBI than any other university.
So you're
in the
not a
country.
TERP. That's what I'm a TERP.
You
I
knew
knew
that.
FBI comes to the campus at least 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous.
Well, I should disclose to your viewers, I do have a personal interest in it. My daughter is a TERP.
Oh,
she's a senior. She's studying criminology and criminal justice.
Okay.
I'd love to see her work closer to our
Right.
home. And the other piece too is that with Fort Meade right up the road, and they're doing the cyber security, they're doing the information systems work, there's also greater synergy. So Prince George's County is an attractive location, a venue to relocate the FBI. The decision was supposed to be made this year. It's an election year. So it might not happen until after the election. We are competing with Virginia. I think most people will objectively say that we have the superior sites here in Prince George's County, but the decision won't be made probably until early next year.
And do you know, now since you worked on this as Lieutenant Governor, do you know what is the process? What will be the holdup? Is it just the election year, or is there some other things, like some processes that they're having?
I mean, it's a lengthy process. I mean, you have to do environmental studies around all the proposed sites. The developers have to submit very detailed proposals on not just how they situate the FBI building, but what other facilities and amenities, what kind of community will you create around this facility? How will it tie into the public transit system? That's one of the requirements, that it be within proximity of a metro station. So there's a lot of planning that goes into it. Developers will, and they have submitted these plans and the studies. It has to be evaluated. Then the GSA, General Services Administration, will ask the developers for additional information. It's a lengthy process. And during an election year, particularly as we get so close to an election, major projects and major regulations typically come to a standstill, waiting for the next administration. So hopefully that won't happen here, but it's likely that it will.
Interesting. And just so, is the Maryland Congressional, and do you know, because I mean you haven't started yet, but do you know if they're going to do anything to continue the campaign to bring it to Prince George's County, or is there something you're thinking of?
Well, a number of things are happening. College Park, the university, recently did a press announcement around it to keep the focus on the project. To continue demonstrating that we're excited about it, we're preparing for the arrival. And while there's a political element to every decision that's made in government, this really is supposedly a non-political administrative decision that's made by the GSA, the General Service Administration, in conjunction with the FBI. So formally, there's no role for the Maryland delegation. We don't make the decision, but certainly we can support the decision that is made and demonstrate that the Maryland Congressional Delegation, which is a good delegation, a very strong delegation, is fully behind this move to Maryland.
Okay. Now, another focus that came up, I know during your campaign for governor, you talked a lot about PreK. I know a lot of the parents are feeling that it's very burdensome, what people have to pay over time for daycare, and how can PreK come in and be more, this whole process in early education. You talked about it a lot. Can you go into it now? Is that still something you're
Absolutely.
focused on?
Look, I have a vision shared by President Obama. Secretary Clinton has articulated it during the course of her campaign. She's fought for it during her years of public service, of universal PreK, expanding early childhood education, certainly to all 4-year-olds, and one day to all 3-year-olds. Right now we have universal kindergarten. If you're 5 years old, then you have a seat in a public school. Some families choose not to send their children to public school. That's their option. With PreK, that would also be an option. You could choose either to send your child to a public PreK program or a private, or in the proposal that I laid out and that I support, for the 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, families can opt out. Some families may not want to send their toddler to a PreK program. But what studies have shown is that those children who are enrolled in a early childhood educational program, whether it's starting at 3 years old or 4-year-olds, they have sort of a running start into kindergarten. They're more prepared to sit in a classroom and learn and take instruction and sit side by side with their peers. And by 3rd grade, we can already measure the difference. And that these children, these students are performing better. And by the end of high school, their opportunities are much greater. If we're going to close the achievement gap, we have to provide greater opportunities to close the opportunity gap so that every child, regardless of what community you're raised in, where your family is from, has access to a world-class education, and that starts with expanding early childhood education. There are 29 to 30,000 4-year-olds in Maryland today that do not have access to affordable quality pre-K. So it was a priority for me as Lieutenant Governor, and it certainly will be a high priority for me as a member of Congress.
Now, do you have to pay for it? Do the parents have to pay for it? Where's the funding going to come from?
So we envision a world in which there is public pre-K. So just like whether you send your child to District Heights Elementary School or Woodmore Elementary School or anywhere else, it's free. It's funded by taxpayer dollars. So that's just what we envision. But we also know that there is a network already of private early childhood educational programs, and some are really good. And if parents choose to send their kids to a private program, that's their prerogative, and we won't want to take that away from them. So it's a combination of public and private programs, and the public programs are funded by taxpayer dollars.
And I know that the bigger question is, but there's always this issue of funding in Prince George's County when it comes to the school system. Do we have enough money? Do we have enough money? Do you think that this will be a burden, creates more of a burden on the school system as is?
Well, it certainly requires us to prioritize education, and if we do what we talked about earlier, which is expand the local economy and the corporate or business tax base, then like other counties in the National Capital Region, in Northern Virginia, in Montgomery County, they're successfully able to fund their schools. We should be able to do the same. With the casino coming online, that gives us some opportunities to put more money into our schools. I don't support a massive increase in property taxes to fund our schools. We have to find greater efficiencies, expand the local tax base, and make pre-K a priority.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short break. This is really good information. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about your vision as a congressman in the 4th Congressional District of Maryland.
Great.
Thank you. And please stay with us.
Green, green, green. It's your home, it's your dream. Radon testing, keep it healthy and clean. Make it green, green, green.
Making it green is making sure the air in your home is healthy for your family to breathe. Make sure you test your home for the presence of radon. It's easy. To learn more, call 866-730-GREEN. Preserve your family's health and well-being. Get your home tested. Now that's living healthy and green.
Green, green, green. It's your home, it's your dream. Radon testing, keep it healthy and clean. Make it green, green, green.
To learn more, call 866-730-GREEN.
Welcome back to Chat with the Lawyer, and I'm your host, Walla Blagay, and as you know, we are here with former Lieutenant Governor and soon Congressman to be Anthony Brown, and we're going to continue to talk about what we can foresee with Congressman Brown. So one of the things we wanted to focus on, recently there was an issue with the HeadStart program in Prince George's County school system, and a lot of people feel that, what's going on, and what should Congress be doing about this, or because this is a federal funding and they're about to lose it, right?
Sure, and look, this is about constituent services. My top priority as a member of Congress is not necessarily passing legislation and making laws on Capitol Hill, although that's a part of it, but it's serving our constituents right here at home and making sure that whether it's our schools, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's any other services that are funded by the government are responsive to the needs of the people. When we think about schools and education, we often think about the county. You know, you see a yellow school bus, it says Prince George's County, Prince George's County Schools. But educating our children is not only a county responsibility, it's a state responsibility, and yes, even the federal government plays a role. So, for example, PreK. And we were talking about PreK a minute ago. One of the most important and fundamental building blocks of a good PreK program is a strong HeadStart program. HeadStart is an early childhood education program designed to provide not just education, but other services to children living in families living in poverty. In Prince George's County, there are over 900 families that benefit from early childhood education provided through HeadStart. And just recently, that program was put in jeopardy because the federal government withdrew over $6 million to fund that program. Now, fortunately, the county has stepped in to make sure that program keeps going, but the larger issue and the reason why the program lost the federal dollars is because it was discovered that there was abuse, emotional abuse, corporal punishment by educators. You know, this is not necessarily a crisis in every pre-K program in Prince George's, but it happened. But exactly. Most disturbingly is that when it was brought to the attention of the program, they didn't take the corrective action, and that is why the funds were lost. That the corrective action wasn't taken. Now, I commend the county executive for recently saying that, hey, if it requires a change of leadership, then we'll do that. Because while this misconduct and abuse may have been done at the lowest levels, an educator, a teacher in a classroom, this is a leadership issue because leaders, supervisors and principals and superintendents have to create the culture and the climate where we are having a conducive, supportive, nurturing environment for our children to learn, not an abusive environment. And that's what we saw in the pre-K in the Head Start program in Prince George County. So I know the county executives focused on it, the superintendents focused on it. It's more than just getting back the $6.5 million of federal funding. It's guaranteeing parents that their children will get a proper education in a safe, supportive, nurturing environment.
Right. Well, we hope that you'll be able to follow up on that issue.
Yes, absolutely. And if that means, you know, look, as a member of Congress, I may not run the school system, but as someone who serves a constituency, I will be actively involved to make sure that we are holding everyone up and down the chain accountable for their conduct.
And as a constituent myself, I would ask that you set up meetings to sort of see the progress with the whole process to ensure that Head Start.
No, absolutely. And a good example, when the Department of Justice issued a report on criminal justice in Baltimore City, my good friend and soon-to-be colleague Elijah Cummings, he convened a town hall meeting, looked at the study, got input from the community. These are the types of things that members of Congress need to do. And certainly as a member of Congress, we're going to look at this Head Start program here in Prince George County. We'll have town hall meetings. We'll solicit input. I don't want to duplicate what's being done, but I want to make sure that what needs to be done is getting done.
Right. Now, that segues into the Constituent Service, which you've mentioned, which is good, you know, that's good, good start. But it's also something that people really focus on. I've noticed that in this area, especially Prince George's County, that most of the congressional members have had programs or even events that they can sort of engage people. I know Congresswoman Edwards would have the nonprofit, you know, and the college fair and things like that. What are some ideas that you're considering for it?
Sure, and even before Congresswoman Donna Edwards, Congressman Albert Wynn had a college fair. And you want to make sure that you've got information about scholarships and financial aid. We'll bring universities and colleges from around the country and here in Maryland to one location where students and parents can shop around, if you will. We'll have a jobs fair. and we'll bring in not only federal agencies as potential employers, but the private sector. So we'll have job fairs. I like the nonprofit. I want to make sure we're including the faith community as well. A lot of the churches have nonprofit, whether it's economic development corporations or community development corporations. So we want to do the nonprofit to make sure we're connecting the nonprofit community to partnership opportunities with federal agencies. I also want to have a conference for our municipalities. The 4th Congressional District is home to more municipalities than any other congressional district in Maryland. So we're going to make sure that we're doing a conference. I also want to do workshops, what we call proactive constituent services. So instead of just waiting for the veteran who needs help connecting to a benefit, instead of waiting for them to come to our office or waiting for a senior to come to our office for assistance with connecting to his or her Social Security benefits, we want to have workshops on a regular basis, bringing it into the community on veterans benefits, seniors benefits, and the like, supporting families and small businesses. We want to do, just like we did in the state, we want to do workshops where we're connecting our small business community with procurement officers and program managers in the federal government, providing technical assistance and relationships. So we're going to have a very proactive outreach to the constituencies of the 4th Congressional District, families and small businesses.
That's good. And now that you mentioned small business, that's really important. I know, so Prince George's County has a group of talent. Just about everyone in the county has a side hustle, some sort of business. And I feel that everywhere I go, someone's always asking me as an attorney, I'm starting a business and I want to do this. So we have so many businesses here. And what are your plans to assist small businesses, or maybe even legislation or anything?
Sure. First of all, it starts by recognizing that small businesses really are big business, in the sense that 2 out of every 3 jobs that are created in our economy are created by a small business. So if we want to grow that economy, like we were talking about, that local economy, you've got to support small businesses. So we talked a little bit about accessing federal procurement dollars, whether it's bringing the FBI here and more contracting, unbundling contracts at Joint Base Andrews. So number one, it's making sure that Prince George's and Anne Arundel, because I represent Prince George's and parts of Anne Arundel County, that our small businesses are having access to the procurement opportunities in federal government. But also, small businesses need technical assistance, and that's where the Small Business Administration comes into play, making sure that at these workshops that I was talking about, that we have representatives who are in the community, in the local economy, providing that technical assistance and support to our small businesses. And then the other piece is access to capital. And that, as you know, in working with small businesses, that access to capital is often a big a stumbling block. So whether that's microloans, making sure that those are available. For every small business that succeeds, there's 1, 2, or 3 that aren't successful. So our focus ought to be on how do we create an environment where more and more small business owners, entrepreneurs here in Prince George's County and Anne Arundel County can succeed. So that'll be a big focus of ours as well.
That's good. That's good. And finally, one of the issues that's come up is the healthcare system. That's been a constant issue. We know that, and when you were Lieutenant Governor, you worked extensively and even intimately on this issue. And some of the concerns people have now is some of the carriers or the insurance companies are pulling out of different markets, and that's becoming a concern of just lowering healthcare costs. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think the way you lower healthcare costs is you make sure that we focus on wellness and prevention. It's a lot less expensive to treat someone with a chronic illness, whether it's hypertension that can lead to larger coronary diseases, whether it's diabetes that can lead to even greater health challenges. If we're focused on wellness and prevention, seeing patients, okay, having people go into a primary care provider earlier, sooner rather than later, number one, we keep the person healthier sooner and earlier, and number two, we keep the cost down. We know that 80% of the cost of delivering health care in our country is consumed by 20% of the patient population that have chronic illnesses. So you have to focus on wellness and prevention. And one of the things that is important in doing that is you have to expand access to health insurance. That's why I applaud President Obama and the Affordable Care Act, because we've now insured 20 million more Americans that didn't have access to affordable quality health care just 3 years ago. Many of them live in Maryland. So when you connect people to affordable quality health insurance, they can now go to a primary care provider instead of getting their primary care in an emergency room when it's often too late. So we focus on wellness and prevention that way. That will help drive down the cost. It doesn't do it in a day. It doesn't do it in a year. We're talking about bending the cost curve, and that takes several years. But with more and more Marylanders and more Americans now having access to health care, they'll have the access to the primary care, to health insurance. They'll have access to primary care and wellness and prevention, which will reduce the cost of delivering care. Another piece, particularly here in Prince George County, we've got to deliver this regional medical center.
Right, that is key.
We laid the foundation for that in the O'Malley Brown administration. It is moving forward. The next big hurdle is we've got to get a certificate of need approved by the Maryland Healthcare Commission. They're going to review this in November. They looked at it in the summer. They said the proposal was too big. The hospital was too big, and I get that because there is a tendency when you build big hospitals, what do? You want to fill the beds. And right now the trend is we don't want to fill beds. We want to keep care in the community, keep people well, prevent them from having to come to the hospital. So you don't want to necessarily build big hospitals. So the University of Maryland medical system went back. They scaled it down a little bit. I'm confident it'll be approved in November. We're going to have a regional medical center in short order here in Prince George's County.
Well, thank you so much for coming on this show. Lastly, we have the elections coming up, and we've just last words.
Last words is get out and vote. Right. Like President Obama said at the Democratic convention, he said, don't just whistle, hoot and holler and applaud or boo, but get up there and vote. Right. And he also, reiterated that on the campaign trail, including his remarks at the Congressional Black Caucus Gala dinner recently. And let's just get out and vote. If we're going to protect President Obama's legacy, let's get out and vote.
Well, thank you for coming on this show. We look forward to seeing your great work as a congressman for the 4th Congressional District.
Thanks, and I look forward to coming back on the show as your congressman.
All right, I like to hear that. Well, thank you for watching the show. As you know, if you want to see more episodes, you can go to www.chatwiththelawyer.tv. Thank you.
I've never been the type to ask for help, but I had enough.
Thank you for calling the Veterans Crisis Line. How can I help you?
Life still has its challenges, but my family and I can deal with them better now. Veterans Crisis Line. It's your call.
I'm starting to worry about my boyfriend. One minute he's supportive, the next minute everything is my fault. He says a couple of beers get him in a good mood. His idea of a couple of beers usually turns out to be a lot more than just one or two. And that's when I start to worry. After he's had too many beers, he gets really angry and I become the target. I hate to say it, but he reminds me too much of my last boyfriend. Aren't there any good men out there? My best friend is a social worker. She told me to try Al-Anon family groups so I could understand my feelings better. I didn't want to go because I didn't want to get into another argument with my boyfriend, but I'm glad I went. I'm starting to understand that I didn't cause his anger. I didn't cause his drinking. It's a great relief to hear a new perspective for my problems. Are you troubled by someone's drinking? You might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon family group meeting from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or visit alanonfamilygroups.org.